Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. This video, Troubleshooting the CompTIA Way, covers the CompTIA methodology when troubleshooting problems. While troubleshooting methodology was pulled from the recent CompTIA exams, CompTIA still deems the troubleshooting methodology as a competency standard that should be demonstrated by IT professionals, particularly when applying for their first IT job. So it's important that you understand the troubleshooting methodology and apply it when looking at the various troubleshooting objectives found on the exam. Through the A+ certification, you'll need to learn how to troubleshoot a wide range of problems. While your experience may have you check a couple quick things immediately when dealing with the problems, you need to learn to use troubleshooting methodology so that you can troubleshoot problems more efficiently and more thoroughly. CompTIA's troubleshooting methodology includes a 6-step process that allows you to frame the problem and guide you to identify and execute a solution. The 6 steps include: identify the problem, establish a theory of probable cause, test the theory to determine cause, plan, which includes establishing a plan of actions to resolve the problem and implement the plan or solution, verify full system functionality, and if applicable, implement preventable measures. And lastly, document findings, actions, and outcomes. A mnemonic to help you remember the steps in order would be: I enjoy taking people's video disc. Identify, establish, test, plan, verify, document. Identifying the problem is the first step. For a company, it usually starts with a phone call, an email, or help desk ticket, or an alert. It is not uncommon for the users to alert you of the problem. Other problems may be identified when you're reviewing logs, receiving an automated alert, or testing applications and services. While you're identifying the problem, you will need to gather information from log files and error messages, question the users, identify symptoms, and duplicate the problem. You may need to have the user to show you the problem. To confirm a theory or solution, you'll need to duplicate the problem. While gathering information about the problem, ask what are the chain of events or steps to duplicate the problem. You also need to determine if there are any recent changes. Problems often start when a change was made to the system. If the user says there's no changes the system has done, please keep in mind that the user may not be aware that changes to the system were done, does not think the change would affect the system, so he or she did not mention the change, or may be too embarrassed to say that a change to the system may have caused the problem. When you check on what might have changed, you'll need to check if the machine was updated recently and if settings were automatically or remotely changed. For example, an organization may use a group policy object to configure a system remotely, which may affect how the machine operates. You also need to check if the environment or infrastructure has changed, such as the changes to firewalls or routes. Hopefully, your organization has a change control process where you can check for recent changes to the environment. If you've verified that the problem exists, you need to determine the scope of the problem. For example, does the problem happen only to the one user or multiple users? Does it affect a specific site or location? Or does the problem only affect one specific application? When looking at the problem, determine how often the problem occurs. Does it happen every time, or does it happen randomly? Random problems are more difficult to troubleshoot since you cannot always duplicate the problem on demand. Before going to the next step, you also need to see if the problem is being caused by user error. When you watch the user duplicate the problem, you might be able to see that they are doing something wrong, such as skipping a required step or selecting the wrong options. I should mention that user errors are very common in IT. As an IT professional, you should not make fun of a user for a simple mistake. In most cases, the user just did not know, or the steps or procedures are not well documented that the user is following. Instead, you should guide them so that they can learn from their mistakes. It is possible that you can encounter multiple problems at the same time. If you determine if there are multiple problems, you need to approach one problem at a time. If it is at all possible, perform a backup of important data that may be at risk. And before making changes, considering backing up the configuration or recording the current configuration and the related configuration changes. Hopefully, if data is important, you're already performing regular backups of the data. The next step is to establish a theory of probable cause. You should start making a list of possible causes. Then after the list is created, start looking at the most obvious causes first and those listed items that are quick and easy to check. For example, the computer does not boot when you press the on-off button. When you make the list, you should include the obvious such as, is the system plugged into power? You would be amazed on how many times something is not plugged or connected properly is the cause of the problem. It is also embarrassing if you're troubleshooting a computer problem and you took the entire computer apart only to find out that the computer is not plugged into an active electrical socket. During this step, be sure to check your organization's knowledge base for similar problems and use your favorite search engine such as Google or Bing or AI chat such as ChatGPT or Copilot and to search for similar problems including any displayed errors. The third step is to test the theory. It is during this step you will determine the cause of the problem. You can see if the machine or device is actually plugged in, or you may need to replace a component with a known good component to see if the problem goes away. For example, if you suspect that the memory is bad, you will remove the suspected memory and install verified working memory. You'll then turn on the machine to see if the machine boots properly. If your theory is not confirmed, establish a new theory by going back to step 2 and look at the next probable cause of the problem. Mature organizations will often have a change control process that you will need to follow if you're making system-wide changes or changes that could affect more than one person. Therefore, you may need to submit the changes for approval, have the changes reviewed to ensure that the changes will not cause additional problems or bigger problems, and have the change approved before you make the change. For step 4, you have to establish a plan of action to resolve the problem and implement the solution. If you find that the system is not plugged in and you plugged it in and it is working, there's not much more for you to do in implementing a fix. If the memory is the problem, which you replace with known good memory, you need to establish a plan that will use this known good memory going forward, or do you need to order replacement memory? In other words, you're trying to establish a plan for the permanent or long-term solution, and you are implementing the solution. You may need to refer to the vendor's instructions or documentation for guidance. After you have implemented the solution, you need to verify that the problem is fixed, know that problems have been introduced, and system or systems is fully functional. If the user has reported the problem, you can verify with the user that the problem is fixed. You may need to consider preventing future issues by taking steps to prevent the issue from happening again. For example, apply system updates, patches, or firmware upgrades. Educate users on best practices, and adjust policies or configurations if needed. Lastly, you need to document the findings, actions, and outcomes. If you had a ticket system, you should document your findings in the ticket. If this was a unique problem, you should consider adding the problem and its solution to your knowledge base. Let's look at an example. The user cannot access the internet. A user reports that he or she cannot access the internet. Step 1, identify the problem. Gather information, ask the user, what exactly isn't working? Check if the issue is affecting just one user or multiple users. Ask, did anything change before the issue started? Duplicate the issue. Try loading a web page on the user's computer with the browser. Did the user get an error? If so, what was the error? Can the user load any other sites? Check local sites and check other internet websites. Findings so far, the user's computer cannot reach websites using a browser. It is confirmed it is all websites. Other users have internet access, meaning the issue is isolated to one device. As far as the user knows, nothing has changed. The error says, this site can't be reached. Step 2. Establish a theory of probable cause. Consider possible reasons. Make sure the cable is connected properly and I have a green network lights on the network adapter. Physical connection issues such as bad cables, cable not connected properly, or disconnected Wi-Fi. IP configuration issues such as wrong IP, DNS, or gateway. Firewall or security settings blocking access. Faulty network adapter. And driver issues. Hypothesis. Check the obvious. Make sure the cable is connected properly and you have a green network light on the network adapter. Notes. Your list of possible reasons and hypotheses that you choose may differ from someone else's probable list of causes and hypothesis. Step 3. Test the theory to determine the cause. Physically check the back of the computer to ensure the cable is connected properly and the network connection shows green lights, which indicates network connectivity. Disconnect the cable and reconnect the cable. Findings. The cable seems to be connected properly, and unplugging it and reconnecting the cable did not fix the problem. No green lights on the network adapter. Need to go back to step 2 and try another hypothesis. Step 2. Establish a theory of probable cause. Go back to your original list of probable causes. Hypothesis. The user's computer may have a bad IP configuration such as wrong IP, subnet, or DNS. Step 3. Test the theory to determine cause. Check the network connection. Run ipconfig/all for Windows or ifconfig for Linux or Mac OS. Look for an incorrect or missing IP address. Ensure you're pointing to an active DNS server. Ensure you have the correct default gateway. Findings. The user has an API-PA address starting with 169.254, meaning it failed to get a valid IP from DHCP. Test DHCP connectivity by running ipconfig/release and ipconfig/renew by checking if the DHCP server is reachable. Result. Failed to obtain a new IP address. Possible DHCP issue or bad network connection. It is an IP configuration problem, but need to go back to step 2 and try another hypothesis to narrow it down even more and find solution. Step 2. Establish a theory of probable cause. Go back to the original list of possible causes. Hypothesis. Check for driver issues. Step 3. Test the theory to determine cause. Check the device manager in Windows to see if the problem with the device. Update the network driver. Findings. No problem seen in the device manager. You update the driver and now get the correct IP address from the DHCP server. Step 4. Establish a plan of action and implement a solution. Possible fixes. Update driver. Action taken. Since updating the network driver fixed the problem, there's no plan of action or solution to implement. Step 5. Verify full system functionality. Check if the issue is resolved. Ran ipconfig/all and a valid IP address assigned. User successfully browses the internet and can ping local and remote servers. Ask the user to test by opening multiple websites and check email and other applications. Step 6. Document findings and actions. What was the cause? The network adapter had a driver issue preventing the PC from obtaining an IP address from the DHCP. What was the solution? Updating the network driver resolved the issue. Next steps. Log the issue in the help desk system for future reference. Note the troubleshooting steps for other technicians. This slide discusses what I call the body check. While the body check is not an established methodology, it is something that keeps in my mind when I'm troubleshooting problems. It's just something that I use to emphasize certain points. Body is checked for backup, obvious, duplicate, isolate. Backup is the first part of the body check. When you're troubleshooting a problem, you need to consider the risk of data and, if possible and reasonable, you should make sure you have a backup of the data in case the problem gets worse before it gets better. Unfortunately, when many problems occur, it is often too late to get a backup of the data. So hopefully for your organization, you have a backup process put in place that protects essential data. The other three parts of the body check were already discussed with the CompTIA troubleshooting steps. Make sure you check the obvious because obvious is the simple things that are often overlooked. To troubleshoot a problem, you have to duplicate the problem and confirm that the problem actually exists. Lastly, you need to isolate the problem, including determining the extent of the problem. When troubleshooting, don't make assumptions. Instead, verify. For example, you might assume that the computer is plugged into the electrical outlet. Since you might assume the computer is plugged in, you do not check the obvious. Lastly, make sure that you communicate. As you work with the user with the problem, make sure the user is kept informed of your progress. If you are going to make changes to his or her system that may affect how the user uses the system, or that there will be a delay in fixing the system, be sure to communicate that to the user. While you are troubleshooting the problems, you need to set expectations with those affected by the problem. Troubleshooting problems can be very frustrating at times, and it can take a lot out of you. You need to be rested, and you need to keep a clear mind. You need to avoid making it personal. If things start to get frustrating, be sure to take a deep breath and, if necessary, take a step back. This may consist of taking a break or jump to something else to get your mind off of it. If your knowledge and internet searches do not provide the necessary help that you need, don't be afraid to ask for help. Talk to your peers and escalate to the necessary specialized teams. Also, considering opening up a ticket with the appropriate vendor. You need to start gathering best practices and recommended settings for computers, devices, and software and put that information into a repository. You also need to make sure to follow the best practices and recommended settings when it makes sense. Following best practices will help you avoid problems now and in the future. In addition, when selecting, installing, and configuring computer components and software, you should consider defining standardizations within your organization. You should consider that each user uses the same type of computer and same type of software. By standardization, you reduce variance, reduce the burden of IT staff, avoid compatibility problems, and improve communications. One type of standard is the de facto standard, which is a standard that has been widely accepted by the industry and customers but has not undergone any formal process to obtain consensus. Some common de facto standards are the use of the QWERTY keyboard and the Windows operating system used in enterprise organizations. Question: the user has opened a ticket about the computer that randomly reboots. Which of the following troubleshooting steps should you perform first? Answer: inquire about possible changes. The first step in troubleshooting is to identify the problem, which includes identify changes done by the user and by the organization, and to determine the extent of the problem. Question: you have been troubleshooting a failing application for several users, and you have learned that the application had to be reconfigured to fix the problem. What should you do next? Answer: write a knowledge base article. You have determined the cause of the problem and how to fix the problem. You have verified that the problem has been fixed. The last step is to document the problem, including creating a knowledge base article if this information will be useful in the future. Question: you verified that the computer is connected to a surge protector that is connected to the AC outlet. You replace the surge protector, the computer, the monitor, and the printer, yet you cannot get the computer to turn on. After a couple of hours, you realize that the AC wall jack is connected to an on-off wall switch. What did you forget to check? Answer the obvious. Make sure you check the obvious because obvious is the simple things that are often overlooked. While this problem may be new to you, by the time you have completed your A+ certification, this should be obvious to you. Question. You're troubleshooting a problem and you made a list of possible causes. You figured you will check the obvious first, including to make sure the computer is connected properly. If your computer is connected properly, what should you do next? Answer. Go back to your list of possible causes and choose the next possible cause to test. You will not always figure out problems the first time. This is the reason a methodology is used to make the troubleshooting more efficient. Therefore, if you did not get it right the first time, go back to the list. For more information, refer to this site. In summary, you need to learn to use troubleshooting methodology so that you can troubleshoot problems more efficiently and more thoroughly. CompTIA's troubleshooting methodology includes a 6-step process that allows you to frame the problem and guide you to identify and execute a solution. The 6 steps include identify the problem, establish a theory of probable cause, test the theory to determine cause, plan, which establishes a plan of the actions to resolve the problem and implement the solution. Verify full system functionality and, if applicable, implement preventable measures. And document findings, actions, and outcomes. Make sure you check the obvious because the obvious is the simple things that are often overlooked. Thank you for watching this video. The next video in the Computer Technician and Troubleshooting 101 series is Tools. If you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Thank you.